Moving on, the third type of session is more unique as you can also ask the guest speaker to address the participants' assumptions. But this type of session would only work if you have done an assumptions activities with the participants beforehand. Susan, can you tell us about the purpose of recording assumptions before the session?
Absolutely, Eva. This was an activity that we developed particularly during lockdown when we needed to be really, really good online. And we continue to be really good online, but this is one that has definitely stood the test of time. And that is asking a group of people to document a list of assumptions. And assumptions are hard to come up with, Eva, because we assume them and we don't think about them. So you need to first of all give scope around it. So assumptions around the future of the world of work, assumptions around where you're going to be in 5 years' time, assumptions around what you think could definitely be different in 2 years' time. Giving parameters first of all and asking people to list them. But then, and this is the key part, then ask them why. Why do you think that? Because then it draws out the understanding of the assumption. And then, this is the part that I think can be very important, is ask them to find a source that can back this up. So maybe it is something from the UN, or it's something from the Financial Times, or it's the BBC, or wherever, right? Some sort of media outlet or whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be a very strong academic backing. That's why I'm not saying Google Scholar or something else like that, but something that can back it up. Now, you can stop there, and that can be that, and then you bring your speaker in. But I just want to elaborate for a moment since we have the time. And that is, when we were doing this online, what we did then was that we implemented a range of techniques on Google Sheets to really back this up. So what I mean by that is from there, students then would have to create a column on Google Sheets. They'd have to create a drop-down menu saying whether they agree or disagree. And then everybody in the group would vote on that. They would have conditional formatting on those drop-down options, another technique they would learn. And then they would also then implement the count if function on Google Sheets as well, which would dynamically count up how many votes there were in agreement and disagreement. And what that did, Eva, was that it gave two very different approaches. It gave that research approach, and then it also gave that Google Sheets technical approach as well. And then, of course, the beautiful thing they saw was that when they had all of that implemented, is that if somebody made a mistake or there was somebody changed their view or somebody came back online a bit later, if they changed their vote, automatically that was counted. So they could really see how automation worked as well. But back to our guest speaker, because we would have all that done before the guest speaker comes in. What it does is it creates a ready-made list of questions, if you want to call it that. And we have given our viewers an opportunity to learn all about how to interact in a Q&A from our experience on a separate video. But specifically in this case, Eva, it just means then everybody has a question that's researched. Now, I have found in working with different people that some people gain a lot of confidence from hearing their own voice articulating something that they've researched, and then hearing somebody who's in authority or a thought leader answering their direct question. This can be very powerful. And then the other thing I would say is it puts everybody on a level playing field. It's not about how good your question is or whether you have the confidence to put your hand up. Instead, what this does is it gives everybody a step-by-step guide to having something to say. It also then completely enables the speaker to be able to have no prep for a start, right? That's often a very important thing when you're asking for somebody's time. No prep. You have a guaranteed I'm going to say 20 minute, 30 minute, however long the group or however big the group is, you have an automatically filled space there. And this is one of the best parts is you know what you're going to speak about is of relevance to the audience. What's in it for them, Eva? They've already documented for you. And that's why I really like this one.
That's a great idea, Susan. And how does the guest speaker usually react to the participants' assumptions?
Number one is they'll often like to see them in advance. And sometimes I say, yeah, sure, we'll send them in advance. And sometimes I'd say, do you really? Like, why don't you come in and be authentic? And if you don't know, that's okay. Show them that you don't know. Point out the fact that it's okay not to have complete information, because the more senior you get, Eva, the less sure you can be about future looking elements, or the less you need to know a lot about an awful lot of things. You need to be able to trust the people who work for you. So being authentic in those responses can be very good. And of course, as I say, some people would also say, look, I want to see them and I want to be prepared. And that's, like I say, totally fine as well. Now, how do they respond? A lot of the time they agree with them. And to avoid this getting repetitive, right? Because I might say, well, I assume more people will be working from home, and you assume more repetitive jobs will be done by robots or automation, right? So if you have an awful lot of repetition, that's where I think it's up to the facilitator beforehand to point out how important it is that everybody is different. Also, you need to give broad enough scope. It can't just be about the future of work is all about automation. It needs to be the future of work in terms of sustainability, or fastest growing careers, or careers that we're not sure about yet, or where people are going to be working, what's the nature of the work they're going to be doing. Give lots of inspiration so that you have diversity of assumptions. And what I think guest speakers tell me at the end of this is that they can often be refreshed and motivated by how positive these assumptions can be, but they genuinely get a sense that they've heard from people in their own words what they really think. And there's a form of reverse mentoring there. So when they come in to speak to that audience, they get the audience's authentic views on those assumptions. So the guest speaker can learn from those too.
And what happens if the time runs out before all the assumptions are addressed?
That does happen, I will say, particularly if somebody likes to elaborate a lot, and you might know who that might be, but if you have somebody who elaborates a lot, or the other thing, I've seen this work very well with two people, Eva, where you have two guest speakers come in and sometimes they'll agree and sometimes they'll disagree. It's always more fun when they disagree. And yes, again, that can happen. What I would say is, if you have a scenario where maybe this is part of a program, let's just say that you're doing this in a master's, right? So you and I are going to go into a master's group and we're going to tackle the assumptions that people have, and we might agree or disagree, and we only get to the first 6 and there's 15. Is then you can always leave it to the facilitator to say maybe that's something that can be continued in a class discussion. Maybe the next time you have guest speakers in, you can pose those. So you can hand that off to somebody else. Of course, the other thing you can do is say, if anybody has anything burning, you can always follow up with us directly afterwards or connect in with us on LinkedIn, etc. And the other thing I will definitely say, Eva, is manage expectations. So if it is, and you realize that you're spending 5 minutes on assumptions and per assumption, and let's say there's 10 minutes left and you know that you're only going to get to another 2, you might just say, I'm aware that we're not going to get through everything. I do want to make the point that we will talk through another 2. If you have any burning ones after that, please reach out to me, but don't leave. What I find an audience really doesn't like, and that's where I'm finishing my sentence with, don't leave an audience hanging if you've asked them to engage with you and then you don't participate in the other side of that social contract. Is manage expectations. Even if they're small ones, they matter.
Those are some great tips, Susan. I'm sure that our guest speakers will find all of your tips very helpful when they do their own activity. So thank you.